Hello, good afternoon. Woo! Welcome in. Long weekend, a rainy long weekend here in the Mile High City, but we are back. The sun is out, and it's Tuesday. I'm Jesse Montano. I'm going to be joined by Meghan Angley in just a few moments. Did want to remind you guys about our great partners over at Trusted American Mortgage. Head on over, trustedamerican.com. They want to help you lower your interest rate, get a better monthly payment, just make your life a little bit easier now heading into the summer. Head on over to trustedamerican.com right now. See how much money they can help you start saving today. Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. Can you believe it? That's Chloe's voice on there in the intro, not mine. Unbelievable. I'm Jesse Montano. She's Meghan Angley. We do have Chloe Thiel behind the glass today. Meghan, holiday weekend, long weekend. I know you spent some of it up in Loveland. We're going to talk about it. Other than what happened yesterday at Blue Arena, how was your long weekend?
It still felt busy for some reason. Maybe it's because Eagles played Friday and then they played Monday. And so in between, it was just kind of looking at other games going on in the conference finals and the NHL. So it still felt really consumed with hockey. And the rain made it all feel kind of heavy for some reason.
Yo, the rain, Saturday. That was a total, just like I told my wife, we were out running errands, but I said, ugh, this is such a just like lay and rot in bed kind of day. Because it was windy. It was pouring, at least at my house, it was just pouring rain all day.
Yeah.
And it's like, these are the days where you don't even want to like go outside to get in the car and go. So you don't even want to walk in from the parking lot.
No, I understand that type of day completely. So I didn't really run any errands.
Yeah, we did a little bit of errand running in the morning. And then it was one of those things where we're like, all right, well, let's go back to the house and like put the groceries away. And then we'll go have like a nice productive afternoon. Nope. Didn't happen. Just sat inside and stared at the rain all day. Busy hockey weekend, like you said. Just a lot going on in the news headlines, in games being played that had real meaning to them. Just a lot happening across several different leagues, world championships. And Meghan, we are going to get into pretty much all of it. And let's start with what we wanted to touch on a little bit on Friday. We ran out of time. Men's Worlds. World championships have been going on. They always run concurrently with the NHL playoffs. It's always a mixed bag of who you get over there. But the year before an Olympic year, not an election year, the year before an Olympic year, you typically see a lot more of the big names going when available. Team Canada had Nathan McKinnon, Macklin Celebrini, Sidney Crosby, Marc-Andre Fleury, Jordan Binnington in net. And yet, Meghan, they are upset by Denmark in the quarterfinals. Don't even get to a medal game. Canada loses 2-1 to Denmark. What is easily the biggest game in Denmark's hockey history is one of the more shocking upsets that we've seen, even at a tournament like this, where the rosters aren't best on best.
Yeah, it was definitely a shock to the system for Team Canada. I think it was a close game, and Canada had the lead in that game, but Nikolai Ehlers. So I think that's kind of the fun part in that, is we were talking like, well, who's on Team Denmark? Like, what happened here? Nikolai Ehlers happened. They held that lead until 2:17 remaining in regulation to even that score. And so because it was already so close, I think that it's just a fun storyline for Denmark, but obviously really disappointing for what Canada was trying to brew up with some of the talent that they had on their roster.
Yeah, and we mentioned it on Friday. Marc-Andre Fleury was trying to become a member of the Triple Gold Club, and really what was his last bit of high-end professional hockey. They fall short, but that did open the door for Team USA, who does go on to capture gold by defeating old friend Sven Andrighetto and Team Switzerland in the gold medal game. And Megan, really just what I wanted to talk about here was the great moment that we see Zach Werenski as they're getting ready for the trophy presentation, the medal ceremony. He goes running off the ice back to the locker room, and he emerges with Johnny Gaudreau's jersey, who had been hanging in a stall for the entire length of the tournament. They get it, they drape it over the cup. It's a part of all the photos. I just thought it was a great moment. Again, for a tournament that we don't normally give a lot of attention to, for Team USA to win their first gold medal in decades, and then to have the Gaudreau jersey there to be part of all that, I thought was really special.
The first on-ice trophy for USA Hockey in 92 years, which is kind of crazy.
Unbelievable.
But so special that it's Werenski who goes running to the locker room to get the Johnny Gaudreau jersey, just with the teammate connection that was there. I loved Ryan Orsofsky's comments after in the locker room. He said that Johnny was here and he was up there watching this one, and he used other colorful words in there for passion. But I thought that was a really beautiful moment for Team USA. And I'm excited. Like, this was a close game, a 1-0 OT win, and it's Tage Thompson who gets the game winner 2 minutes into overtime. And he was one of the Four Nations kind of extras and didn't really get to represent Team USA in this kind of Olympic bid, hopeful for Team USA in the future. Yeah. It's nice that he gets this stage then in the summer to kind of showcase his abilities. And then finally, happy for Zeev Buium and Team USA. I know his debut for the Minnesota Wild has come with some ups and downs, but this is a player with a lot of winning in his bloodline through this point. So really happy for Team USA, and love that the cherry on top of that Sunday was the moment with Johnny Gaudreau's jersey. It
was fantastic. Big credit to USA Hockey and like you said, Zach Werenski for having the quick thought to go do that. Megan, I don't remember if we were talking about it on the show or if it was just you and I chatting, but we were talking about Tage Thompson last week, and you specifically said, like, man, this is a player that I just don't think gets enough credit. I think back a lot to when Austin Matthews was talking about Tage Thompson a couple seasons ago, saying this guy does not get enough credit around the league for how good he is. And so I'm with you. That was one of the first thoughts that went through my mind, was like, that's a nice moment for Tage Thompson. Probably just because of the caliber of team that's around him. That might be the biggest goal of his career to this point. A golden goal at World Championships. Great shot. And he's just a monster out there.
Yeah. That's what elevates him in these conversations that I think he sometimes gets left out of, and why I want to put them there is his toolkit is a little different from other superstars in the league, with his height, his length, that reach, and what it allows him to do on the ice and what makes him such a powerful player. 44 goals this season for Tage Thompson in what was otherwise a disastrous year for the Buffalo Sabres. And so this is a player that I'd love to talk about more than we ordinarily get to. Excited he has this moment. Hope it does strengthen his case for representing Team USA in the future.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't have it necessarily built into this show, but Megan Bowen Byram, JJ Peterka, we're seeing both those names out there. We know that Buffalo has entertained moving Tage Thompson before. Sounds like that was maybe even a conversation again this past season. I know in the lead up to the Casey Middlestat trade, the Avs had poked around Tage Thompson. I think this is a player that we should maybe revisit here in the coming days or weeks about, like, is this a guy that could be on the move? And boy, oh boy, you're talking about 2C. Would that not be a great fit?
Hearing the rumors in the past of instead of a Middlestat, what if it was Tage Thompson? It's like how I felt about what if it was Matthew Nyes and the Avs were somehow able to orchestrate that as part of the Rantanen return. I almost don't want to hear this information between Tage Thompson and the Middlestat trade and now Matthew Nyes and the Rantanen trade. I don't want to hear it because it didn't happen, and I would have loved it if it did.
Yeah, I'm with you. That would have changed a lot of things, in my opinion. But I'm with you. Good to see Tage Thompson make an impact, because this is a little bit of an Olympic tryout. It's part of the reason why Connor Bedard has gotten some heat, even though he went last year. There's a lot of people who said, well, why didn't Connor Bedard go this year? A lot of that's because you are looking at guys who are trying to endear themselves to management and coaching staffs that are going to be behind those teams next year at the Olympics. But
have you seen some of the projected contract extensions for Matthew Nyes? Just like random, quick little bullet point.
No, I haven't. I saw Paul Bissonnette talking about what he thinks all the guys should sign for. And
yeah, they're all
team friendly for sure. So I'm not going based on that. But what do you think?
No, they've been kind of on the higher end, and not that this is a player who isn't worth it. It just feels like, yes, because I think his criticism specifically, and I'm not sure if I'm mistaking his tweet with another, was, what is it with these players? Like, just, can we get a few more bridge deals for some of these young players rather than just immediately jumping to term? And I think some of the contract projections I've seen floating around immediately do jump to kind of long-term contracts. And I love Matthew Nyes, but it feels so nerve-wracking for Toronto. Like, isn't this kind of the room you're trying to get out of? You've anchored yourself, handcuffed yourself to some of these long contracts with these star players that you're banking on will be the difference makers. And look, I already like the body of work from Matthew Nyes, but it feels like we really got to change the direction of how we are constructing the team in the immediate and the future. So anyways, I was just looking at it curiously, because as much as I love this player, I do think that the Leafs need to buck some trends here with some of these next contracts.
You know, for as hard of a time as, and I'm not even saying that it's not warranted, you know, for as hard of a time as the Avs organization gets, and Chris McFarland and Jared Bednar and star players for not, you know, winning more than one Stanley Cup, the Toronto Maple Leafs for years and years and years struggled to even get out of the first round. Now it's okay. Now you can get to the second round, and hey, you won a game in the second round. It's like, yeah, incremental improvement, but you're almost a decade into this. To your point, Megan, like, I don't know, maybe don't let one guy walk only to immediately run it back with a different player like 2 minutes later. Like, I just, take a deep breath and maybe reassess how you're putting this together. I almost said long-term contracts aren't always a good thing. I think if you can lock up good players for a long time, that's generally a positive. But I think the point you're making is like, yeah, but you just got out of what felt like a stalemate a bit.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see what they work out with him, because he's obviously a valuable player to Toronto and the future direction of the club that it needs to be heading.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think he's a little bit not as samey, but I totally hear what you're saying. Let's move on and let's talk about it, Megan.
No.
Let's talk about it. On Friday, the Colorado Eagles do force deciding Game 5 with the Abbotsford Canucks, winning in exciting fashion. And you kind of felt good. All right, you're going to get a couple days off here. Go into Monday. You're at home. You're feeling good. Every game has been tight. And then they lost 5-0 yesterday.
It's devastating. It's puzzling. A lot of the Avs front office has been there throughout this whole series. And when I want to say it was 3-0, you could see in the hallway in intermission a lot of serious conversations happening among the front office staff. And I can't help but feel like the way both the seasons have ended now for the Avs and for the Eagles just felt so disappointing and kind of mind-boggling, because Abbotsford had the second best home record, or wins at home, in the league behind the Colorado Eagles this past season. And so the way this series starts, 2 games on the road, Eagles steal one. And so they get shut out 2-0 in that first game, and then they come back and steal game 2 with a big 5-3 win. And obviously that game 3 is an OT loss. And honestly, I thought the Eagles were the better team. So that's where this confidence is starting to build. It's paper thin margins, but the Eagles were very good in game 3. I want to say they were the better team in the OT period by period. I think Abbotsford could make a case for being a better second period team in game 3. But when you boil it down, if you had the possession numbers that we had access to for the Avs, for example, 5v5 possession, right? It would probably have favored the Colorado Eagles, including much of game 5, which I'll get to in a second. They have the statement win in game 4 to force the game 5, and they really limit Abbotsford to very little opportunities. And they get a power play goal, which has been difficult because Abbotsford's penalty kill has been second rate in these playoffs, like one of the best in the league. And though the Eagles have had a good power play in the regular season, a top 10, and then in these playoffs, still a top 10, but held to fewer power play goals than they were used to getting, it was significant then for them to kind of get that monkey off their back, getting that Ty Felber power play goal in game 4. And then game 5 happens. Now we're present day.
Present day.
I have some frustrations. The way this game starts, drop of the puck, Eagles have intensity. They're pushing. They're controlling the pace of this game in the first period. There's a few moments early on that I think are significant, and I won't make excuses for them, but I want to point them out. The Eagles get a power play in the first period, and so not only are they creating chances 5v5, they get this power play opportunity, and a couple of those pucks go into the netting, plays disrupted, stopped, they restart face-off kind of thing. And then at 2 different points in the first period, Sheloffs moves the net off its moorings and gets a whistle. And the first time it happens, he gets a pretty stern warning from the referee. Stop it, Artur. Anyways, he warns him. And the second time it happens, the crowd is losing their mind. It's so obvious he did it intentionally. It was an Ivan shot, I remember. And I remember thinking to myself, that probably wasn't going to beat him clean. But in both these instances, they could have been second, third opportunities for the Eagles to try for. And when you're seeing, too, the way in which their play is already being disrupted, some pucks going to the netting, execution issues, that's going to be where I'm not giving them excuses. You start to wonder, though, how much this changed the momentum of this first period, because it's upsetting. It feels kind of cheap that this was happening, because you go back to game 3 and this happened then too. Sheloffs was moving the net off its moorings intentionally. And so he created this habit of doing it to where you're not even giving him the benefit of the doubt as a viewer.
Right.
As the officials on the ice, he did get it, because that second time it happened, there was no repercussion. And the Eagles...
The WEF didn't do anything?
A WEF didn't do anything. And so no repercussion. And the way this period ends is where the Eagles get into trouble that they can't come back from. They dig themselves into a hole because, I don't know, I'd say for about 15 minutes of the first period, they still continued to lay on that push pretty heavy. And then they let back a little bit. And so there's a penalty. Oscar Olafson on a penalty in the first period.
Shocking.
There's a penalty, you guys, okay? And Abbotsford capitalizes on it. And so now they're up by 1. And then a minute later, they score again. And this is where I think they got in the Eagles' head and never escaped from it. And so they were in a hole that they couldn't climb out of, even though they come away with the shots lead at the end of it all. And honestly, it was close through 2 periods with maybe a 1-shot difference between the 2 teams. But, by the third period, they were putting everything they could. And at that point, Sheloffs was playing really well without having to move the net off its moorings, that they just couldn't beat him. It was actually so sad to watch, because some of these chances were better opportunities than you saw getting disrupted in the first period. It obviously helped Sheloffs' confidence, though. And so at that point in the game where the Eagles are making their best quality chances, best quality push, Sheloffs is locked in. And so there was no getting past it. The other thing is the Eagles didn't do themselves any favors with their neutral zone coverage. There were shades of the Dallas Avs series that I'm haunted by to this day. I see it in everywhere that I look. What happened in the Dallas Avs series will haunt me forever, probably. But at least the first 3 goals in this game for Abbotsford are these quick strike attacks, different ways. Like one of them is that power play goal against, but they actually get a no-zone face-off because of an icing, and they get beat back though. And so they're getting beat back through the neutral zone, and Abbotsford is scoring immediately upon entry. And so here's where I'm going to make one quick little thing that we never speak of again, and it wasn't Trent Miner's best game. We never speak of this again. Look, the Eagles did not provide any goal support, so this isn't a singular blame to Trent Miner, but he got beat clean immediately upon entry with some of these chances for Abbotsford. And that's where I would have loved to see the Eagles counter some of Abbotsford's speed through the neutral zone, stand guys up at the blue line. And so there were just a couple miscues too, because there was aggression, there was effort on behalf of the Eagles, but they were just getting beat by speed, which shouldn't happen because the Eagles are a very fast team too. So I was a little disappointed. There were things for them to improve on. You know, at the end of the game, you see Jacob McDonald comforting Jason Magna, and I can't help but feel similar to how the Avs must have felt, that this was a really special team. You heard that throughout the course of this year culturally, what they built, the brotherhood that existed between everybody, and the resiliency of this group, because they lose Jack O'Shawn, who's one of their best defensemen and a big contributor offensively with the way that he likes to play. And he hasn't been an option to them in this series. They lose Jake Wise for game 4. He's been an important player on both special teams. And even though he comes back in game 5, he's not at 100% following a hit in game 3. And so that didn't help them. Jason Poland was a little banged up. He comes back in this series though. And so the Eagles have had to be resilient in ways that I also want to give them credit for. That will get lost in the storyline of this season, which I'll get to in a second, because this was a historic year for the Colorado Eagles. And I don't want us to lose sight of the huge step forward that they've taken as an organization, as a team, because they lost game 5 in a very sad way. But they were resilient. They had to overcome some adversity, some injuries over the course of the year. And that's what leads me to my next point. This was a team that won the Pacific Division this year and had top 10 special teams, which I haven't seen. Dan Heinold joins the coaching staff and specifically helps with the power play, and it sees improvement. And Aaron Schneekloth, a defensive-minded coach who really drills in a lot of discipline and a lot of strict but good habits in his team, starts to get more out of all of his players. And so I point to a player like Jake Wise, who came in on a PTO, and he'll be back next year. It's a success story. He's on both special teams. He's just such a great option for them down the middle. And this was a player who has a point, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a new career high in points with the Colorado Eagles. And so Jacob McDonald, the year that he has with the defenseman record for goals by defenseman in a single season and breaking the American League record, like the individual success stories of this year. Trent Miner gets his NHL debut and solidifies himself as a starter.
Yeah.
And he's really leaned on heavily and trusted so much by the Eagles this past year. A goalie that was once resigned to the East Coast League finally breaks through.
Can we pause right there?
Yeah.
Just because you mentioned him not having a great game. And so I just went and pulled it up and you know, like that, it is disappointing that, you know, for him, like not for me, you know, I'm not like disappointed, but like it's disappointing for him to have the season that he did. And then, the one bad game you've had in the last 2 months comes on the worst day possible. And, you know, bad game, however you want to phrase it. I do think that there is something there to take out of real positive for this year. You know, Artur Silovs is 24 years old. He got a lot of notoriety last year because Thatcher Demko got injured and the Canucks were dealing with injuries the wrong time. Silovs came in and played excellent for the Vancouver Canucks in the playoffs last year, almost beat Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and the Edmonton Oilers. You know, couldn't get it done. And as things shake out this year, he finds himself back in, you know, with Abbotsford. But there's a lot of Vancouver Canucks fans who are very high on Artur Silovs. Trey Miner is also 24. And in my opinion, and I think you agree with this, solidified himself this year as a legitimate AHL starter. That's not nothing. That's not insignificant to have a young goaltender in your organization that you're like, yeah, we can almost set and forget Trent Miner, AHL starter. That's not nothing.
No, it's not. It just in hearing the way his teammates talk about him, this is hilarious too, but even the way the wives talk about him, he's leaned on so heavily. He is trusted so much. And even in this game, comes up with some big saves. There was a windmill in the second period. I remember thinking, oh, I really hope they make that worth his while. You know, like I hope they just get one to go. I was really hoping it wouldn't result in a shutout loss.
He was a .925 goaltender in these playoffs.
So that's the other thing too, is he was the reason they won some nights going back into the Barracuda series. Not that the Eagles didn't play well. He just, like a Mackenzie Blackwood, would settle things down if the Eagles didn't have their best period. Because, you know, period by period, it could ebb and flow a little bit as to who was the better team. And Trent Miner was this constant over the course of these playoffs to give them a chance to win every period, no matter what the product was on the ice. And because, you know, you look at their lead points producers in these playoffs, and the top line of Ty Felleber, Jason Magna, Matthew Phillips, so much came from that line. So there's this concern of, you know, did they get enough from the whole of the lineup? And they did get more depth contributions than the Avs did, for example, in the Avs Dallas series. But I look at something like that, and in game 3, they were pretty absent, the top line specifically. And they still squeak out the OT game. And honestly, Trent Miner was the better goaltender through 3 periods in regulation, but Sheloff was the better goalie in OT because the Eagles had some chances on Sheloff that should have been the game winner and just weren't. And so it was kind of a goalie duel, honestly, in the Abbotsford Eagles series. And Sheloff has some more NHL reps under his belt to include a conference final with varied results, but the success that he had there is not something I'll ever take away from him for Vancouver, and making it a way more intriguing series than I think Edmonton would be happy with, right? It was like, why is Vancouver giving Edmonton this much trouble right now? Like, do they deserve to be in the conference final right now?
We all looked at that, because do you remember we were sitting in that bar in Dallas all watching that game where Vancouver came back on them, and we were like, what is happening? What is happening right now? How is Vancouver with Artur Silovs in this game, in this series? But yeah, you know, Trent Miner was a .918 goaltender through 38 games of the regular season. That's by today's goaltending standards, that's outstanding. And then .925 through 9 games in the playoffs.
You know, actually, do you have compared to the other goalies through this playoffs? Because now I'm starting to, he had one of the best save percentages a couple games earlier in this series. So now I'm curious where he finished. Don't worry.
Silovs, geez Louise, no wonder. He is a .936 right now with a .173 goals against through 12 games in these playoffs. So for as good as Trent Miner was at a .925, you ran into maybe the only goalie that was hotter.
Yeah. And the Eagles padded his numbers there a little bit in trying to create so many opportunities. That's not to take away from Shelovs, but the nonsense with moving the net really bothered me because it cheapens what is a good goaltender, and it just takes away then from your evaluation of his success a little bit when you're factoring that in.
Yeah, no doubt. Before we move on, we got a note here. Who threw a chair?
Oh my gosh, I forgot to talk about this. There's some bad information going around about this, but on the Abbotsford broadcast, you could hear the play-by-play guy arguing with someone in the background. And the Abbotsford play-by-play guy claims that a chair was thrown at him by an angry Eagles fan who came up, because if you know anything about the way the press box and then these areas, like the broadcast booth for Abbotsford would be here, Eagles is right here, press box is in between. It's pretty open access because there's suites on this floor. So anybody who has a suite can just walk around this floor, and the top of the lower bowl, this is the hallway. So it's completely open to the public. So it's not impossible. This fan went up and was heckling the play-by-play guy. But you can see in the Twitter thread, the fan came forward and he shares his side of events. and says that he went up there and he was heckling them about Sheloff's moving the net. And it was during the live broadcast, which isn't cool. You should not do that at all. But the other guy with Abbotsford, like, I don't know if it's color commentator, play-by-play, slams the door shut so that this guy can't keep heckling them. And something about the door being slammed shut, the fan claims, is when he thinks this guy thinks he got hit by a chair. But there was never a chair thrown at him, allegedly. According to the fan, this was just a door being slammed shut. So I don't know who to believe. All I know is I was there and I was not alerted of any chairs being thrown, which, by the way, would not be cool. Heckling broadcasters, throwing things at that would never be okay. I'm just not sure that's exactly what happened.
If it is, you shouldn't be allowed back in a hockey rink. If that's not what happened, it is equally not cool to make a story like that up.
No, and so where I think it maybe wasn't made up is when the door was slammed,
maybe something fell over.
Something, knocked him. And so I don't think it was fabricated, but hard to say what really happened. I'll do some more digging though. I'll talk to some people, see
if we can get figured out. A really fun season for the Eagles, but ultimately a really disappointing finish there, Megan, in what is technically the third round of the AHL playoffs. So they went deeper than they ever had, but could not get out of their own division. The parallels between them and the Avalanche run deep. Megan, let's step up to, I was going to say professional, but AHL is professional too. I wanted to make a cool little let's step up to the pros, and we were already there. PWHL did award the second ever Walter Cup this weekend. Yet there is still only one champ, Megan. The Minnesota Frost run it back. They go back-to-back. Friend of the show, Colorado native Nicole Hensley has 2 Walter Cup rings now, Megan. I was laughing because they won in overtime. And I said, there had to be a little bit of PTSD when that puck went in. Like, do we all...
Is it real?
Do we go? Should I hold on to all my gloves? Because they had the goal called back on what they thought was a cup clinching goal last year. But just great for Nicole and the entire Minnesota Frost organization. Back-to-back PWHL champs.
Well, what I like about this, too, that I hope people don't take away, is there enough parity in the league, for them to be back-to-back champs? Do these teams need to be constructed differently to be competitive? It was a best-of-5 Game 4 win. So, all right, 2-1, they sweep, but all games go at least 1 overtime. And Game 3 went to triple overtime.
Yep.
One of the longest games in PWHL in its short history. And so these were tight games every step of the way, is what I want to point out. It wasn't as if Minnesota coasted their way through this series against the Ottawa Charge. It was really tight. And so I want to give them a shout out. 33 save performance for Maddie Rooney in this Game 4 win. It says a lot, though, about the identity of this team, why they would have continued success in the postseason with what they're building there.
Not to mention, Megan, they got in as the last seed in the playoffs on a tiebreaker. So to your point, it's not like they, dominated last year, coasted to the Walter Cup, and then dominated again this year. And this is a team that has had to fight for everything. Again, last year, the last team in. They're in the original 6 era. They take the top 4 teams. Each of the last 2 years that Minnesota has gone on to win, they have gone in as the number 4 seed.
Yeah.
So credit to them. They know how to turn it on at the right time.
Right. Sorry, I said sweep. They lose Game 1, and then they go on to win the following 3. So they start the series down, and it's just a comeback from start to finish, and a tightly battled series.
And it is also interesting. I already saw an article this morning about it's awesome. And the Minnesota Frost, they've won the first 2 championships, and now we enter a new era with the PWHL, as they'll be welcoming in 2 new expansion teams next year. Vancouver, Seattle. And so, it is just interesting because it's like, all right, well, the original 6 era has ended, and the Minnesota Frost are the only ones that ever won anything.
Yeah.
And now
we've got a dynasty in the making here.
That's right. Seriously. And now you move to 8 teams, and everything about that league is going to change.
A new Islander has entered the villa. Is that what it is? Am I mistaking my reality shows?
I don't know which one that
is.
If that's Love Island, I haven't seen Love Island.
What is it, Chloe?
Bombshell?
A new bombshell has entered the villa. Thank you.
What show is that?
2 new bombshells have entered the villa.
What show is it?
It's
it is
Love Island.
Okay, all right.
That's why I said Islander. I knew there was some Island in there. Anyways,
yes.
Minnesota, they win it at home this time too, in front of the home crowd. That's also very special, and I'm happy for them about that.
Totally. But yeah, they will go down as the only team that ever won the Walter Cup in the original 6 era, and now that league barrels towards having 8 teams when the puck drops next season, Megan. And it's just really exciting stuff for women's hockey. You and I talked about it going back years, saying like, gosh, I want to see these women's leagues unify and get under one umbrella and put together the league that the sport deserves. And they've done that. They've done an excellent job. And the fact that we're 2 champions in, and expansion coming, like I'm really excited. The quality is going to only get better. The teams are only going to get deeper. And as the league grows, I just hope that Colorado is on the expansion list, because it'd be really fun to get a chance to see this all up close. And they're going to start adding games. The seasons are going to grow from 30 games, which was longer already this year than what they did last year. So I'm really looking forward to it, but just couldn't be happier for Nicole Hensley and the entire Minnesota Frost team.
Yes, I'm personally so happy the Walter Cup's coming back to Colorado.
Yes. I've already talked to Nicole, so get ready. We've got more content coming. And yeah, we've been lucky enough to do a little bit of work with them, so we've gotten to know some of the ladies from that team a bit, and just awesome individuals, and you're just happy to see it. Megan, not quite the finals yet, but we are well into the conference finals in the NHL. And the Carolina Hurricanes last night, finally, for the first time since 2006, Carolina Hurricanes have won an Eastern Conference final game. And I should mention, this is their 4th try at it since 2006.
Yeah, I'm stressed because it just feels like a fluke.
Yeah.
You go back, all right, 5-2 Florida, 5-0 Florida, 6-2 Florida. All right, Carolina squeaks in a 3-0 shutout.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good. Paul Maurice said they lacked their killer instinct in that game. And what troubles me about it is I don't think that's a mistake they'll make twice.
Yeah.
So I fear it is too far gone for the Carolina Hurricanes even still. I'm glad they get the moral victory, though, of finally getting a win in the conference final. But I don't know that I can assign it much more weight than that.
Yeah, you may have saved Rod Brindamore's job. Like, if you get swept for the 3rd time out of the conference final twice in 3 years, I don't know, maybe there's a question there, but I'm with you. Good for Freddie Anderson. Did not start game 3 because of his games 1 and 2 performance. So for him to get back in the net, get a shutout, bring the series back to Carolina, good, good for them. But I'm with you, Megan. I just don't know how much of a difference it's
I want to read this Brindamore comment, because we talked about this after 2 games had been played in the series, how players like Svechnikov didn't even register a shot on net.
Mm-hmm.
And after game 3, Brindamore said it's bad decision making, and the 4 rookies in the lineup can't be some of your better players. That can't happen. There's a couple of guys in there that I don't think came to play the way they needed to in this time of year. Can't be Jordan Stahl and Martin Nuke being our best players. That can't always be that way, and they are every night. We needed more out of some guys. Now, obviously, great response from the team then in game 4 on the heels of those comments, but it points to greater concern, a larger issue here for the Hurricanes to address.
Right. And it's part of what, just from the analytical, what we do standpoint, it's part of the reason why the Mikko Rantanen thing not working out for Carolina seemed to hurt as much as it did, because that was their attempt at solving this problem.
Yeah.
They've always had this problem. Our best players, our players who put up big points in the regular season, don't show up, can't make the impact that we need come playoff time. And them trying to add Mikko Rantanen, that was them trying to do that.
Yeah.
That was them trying to get themselves a playoff performer, an offensive force, someone who in these moments, now, you read off those final scores. I don't know if having Mikko Rantanen makes much of a difference. 6-1, 5-0, 5-2. But I think the idea was always supposed to be, we need a top guy who doesn't go quiet come playoff time. Part of the reason why I give him so much credit for getting to this point, because I actually do think that going into the playoffs, they were a worse team than what they were at the start of the season on paper. But yeah, I'm with you. I don't know. Logan Stankoven scoring that goal is a great story. Don't know if that's going to be enough to get him back in this series. Not to mention, you're playing a Florida team who went through this last year going up 3-0 and seeing it almost whittle away.
Yeah. That was a funny turn of events. I'll be curious to see. I do think too that Logan Stankoven part is interesting. He's their 4th highest points producer on the Hurricanes, and I don't think he was expected to be that. So that also still reinforces this concern. Like, it's great that they are getting this kind of production out of him. 5 goals, 3 assists through 14 games for the young player. Great. But also, there needs to be more from other players with more experience and more expectation. So we'll see how it plays out. Did you?
Which one?
Hurricane.
Yeah, I did read that one. I don't want to put anybody on blast.
No. We're just moving on to the Western Conference Final.
Western Conference Final. I want to start here. There's a lot that I want to touch on with this series. But I want to start with the slash on Roope Hintz. I guess, how do you feel about it?
I'm a little confused.
Okay, me too.
It's not okay that it happened, but I don't understand how it resulted in the injury that it did.
Right.
And I believe that an injury really occurred because he was not available to them game 3.
Yep.
Still a game time decision for game 4 tonight. So I'm not skeptical of the severity of it. I'm just not sure how it happened.
And how it... Megan, I've watched hockey for almost 3 decades. I've covered this sport professionally for almost 10 years. I've watched that replay so many times, and I can't figure out how there's any one person out there saying that it should have been a 5 and that Darnell Nurse should have been suspended. I just can't figure it out. It looks to me like it caught Roope Hintz in an unfortunate spot. Hit him just in the right spot. It hurt. Probably left a deep bruise. I'm sure that wasn't comfortable. Like you said, he missed a game. Those types of hacks and whacks and cross checks and battles in front of the net, a player gets slashed like that on the laces probably 20 times a game. And there's people out there saying that Darnell Nurse should have been ejected from the game and suspended over it. You don't punish to the injury. You punish the infraction. And I feel like there's a lot of people who are saying, well, Roope Hintz got hurt.
Roope hurts.
Roope Hintz got hint. Roope Hintz got hurt, so therefore Darnell Nurse needs to pay. I'm like, okay, if Mason Marchment wants to go out there and run Darnell Nurse from, into the wall from behind, okay, he's going to get in trouble. He's probably going to get suspended, but if that'll make you guys feel better. But what Darnell Nurse did was not anything more than a 2-minute minor. It just wasn't. And I can't believe that has even become a controversy in this series.
It's interesting because Darnell Nurse was suspended one game for the Quinton Byfield cross-check in the LA Edmonton series earlier. And you look at it and it's not just like you mentioned, in hockey, there are just some things kind of away from the play that happen. You just eat it. This was a little extra, this cross-check. So it makes sense. And then on the heels of that, it's like, oh, maybe he's towing that line in kind of the incorrect way. Because obviously he shouldn't have slashed Hintz either. This was just unnecessarily, I don't want to use the word violent because that's so dramatic here. There's just so much force there in this slash. Still don't know how it resulted in that injury. So maybe you make a case for that. But then I look at the Roope Hintz cross-check on Nathan MacKinnon.
Yeah.
And it's actually very similar to the Darnell Nurse cross-check on Byfield that warranted a suspension. So honestly, I'm not the type of person where I would say, well, that didn't get called, so when another bad thing happens, It shouldn't be penalized. It's just hard to see the fan discourse around it. Like, I don't know, if we're going to care about this, then we need to care about all of it. And I'll be more supportive of the care then.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. And it's just like, I don't know. And I mean, even Pete DeBoer getting up and saying, I don't know how that's not a 5. It's like, yes, you do. You're a smart guy. You've been around hockey your entire life. You know exactly why that wasn't a 5. And you're up here once again, pleading your case. There's a clip that I'm still getting comments from Dallas Stars fans about where we talked about this in round 1 after game 6, where Pete DeBoer got up and said, I'm disgusted by the missed calls. It can't happen this time of year. And we said, going back in time and looking at these different references, this is just something that it's a tactic that Pete DeBoer deploys trying to get a call. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's something Pete DeBoer does. To me, him coming out after that game saying, oh, it should have been a 5-minute penalty on Darnell Nurse. It's like, that's just you pleading to the refs again. You're a smarter guy than that. You've watched enough hockey. You know that's not a 5-minute penalty.
No, you're disappointed about the outcome,
right,
in terms of the injury, but that's not what gets penalized.
Correct.
And I have mixed feelings about that when it comes to head injuries.
Totally.
Sometimes, but this one's just a little different in nature.
And now I do think for a hit to the head, something that player safety looks at and says is intentional, we are going to give supplemental discipline to this, then yeah, I do think taking into account how severe an injury is when you're deciding how many games to suspend someone for. You cannot call a penalty. How many times do we see it, Megan, throughout the season where there was the Jamie Benn high stick. The ref didn't see anything, but he saw Jamie Benn do this and go down. So he put his hand up. He looked back, saw Jamie Benn down holding his face. So he put his hand up. Like, that to me is the stuff where it's like, you can't make a call just because somebody's down if you didn't see something.
Which also makes me sad that Nathan MacKinnon had to campaign for his high stick call when he was gushing blood.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like, actually, can you always see things? Well, that would be better. That would solve all of these problems if you just always were watching what was happening.
And truthfully, I'll even give them a little bit of for the benefit of the doubt here. I actually thought the officials handled that Nathan MacKinnon instance and the Darnell Nurse thing right. They called a penalty that allowed them to review. That's a good use of the review process. They said, okay, we didn't see what happened. We know there's a player being helped off the ice. We're going to call a major so that we can review it and make sure we get the call right. And maybe that's where some folks are coming from with like, oh, it should have been a major. That was what they originally called it. But to me, I just see that as the refs understanding the rules and what they can do to make sure that things are being done right. But Megan, I don't know if you were sitting and watching the last game 3 between Edmonton and Dallas. I was sitting there watching it and listening to the commentary. I didn't want to say anything publicly because I knew how it was going to come off, and I knew that people were just going to be getting my mentions about it.
Speak your truth, Jesse.
But you and I talked about it, of like,
don't bring me into this.
But Megan, you said, no, but we were talking about it as that round 2 is nearing an end, Dallas and Winnipeg. And we were saying, wow, what Mikko's doing is incredible. This is amazing to watch. And then we were like, however, what maybe people aren't talking about enough is that, gosh, I don't know right now, if Mikko Rantanen is not involved, the Dallas Stars are not generating offense.
If the power play is not involved,
the Dallas Stars are not generating offense. And now here we are, Megan, heading into game 4, and that's still the case. And now for the first time in this playoffs, they've lost 2 games in a row. And the broadcast was saying, like, the Dallas Stars have been down before in games, but Pete DeBoer has never been down in games or series where he has, the exact quote was, where he has this many star players who are completely MIA. The Dallas Stars need a big offensive performance tonight from all 4 lines. They tout the depth. They tout the amount of high point getters they have, but this does seem to be a little bit of a pattern for the Dallas Stars as they get deep and the offense dries up. Mikko Rantanen now without a goal, I think for 7 games. He's still producing, but the offense is drying up quickly in Dallas. And if the Finns aren't involved, they really aren't generating much right now, Megan.
No, and it doesn't feel like brand new information. It's just being exposed more glaringly in this series. And well, for one, it's because you've got 2 teams who should be capable of producing. And so Edmonton's, they're showing up, they're providing their end of the bargain. But Dallas is showing kind of how one-dimensional some of their offense is. And that's not to say Dallas is out of this series by any stretch, but they've been outscored 9-1 the last 2 games. And as you've mentioned, they're not getting the contributions from top players. What's tough too is you look at the end of the regular season and these struggles existed then too. They just were kind of papered over. We enter the playoffs, they're battling some injury, which grants them some allowances then when the offense isn't just completely coming. And similarly, they get some amazing performances from Mikko Rantanen. And I think even Matt Duchene, the player that often comes up in these conversations as the guy who doesn't always show up in the playoffs, I think, going back to Dallas Avs, it was pretty good. And so seeing these players grow a bit quiet in the conference final against a team that's going to take advantage because they don't have a hard time coming up with offense. And they're getting, some better goaltending the last couple games. So if that continues to persist for Edmonton, then Dallas is definitely in trouble.
They're in trouble. They've got to, and they that's a tough building to go into. Edmonton, it's loud. They play well there. I'm trying to pull it up really quick because I have seen some of the most recent comment that came in, Mikko doing Mikko things. I have seen a little bit of this sentiment over the weekend of, Mikko Rantanen disappearing. To me, that's just a little bit hard to say. He's got 10 more points than the next closest Dallas Star. Make one thing very, very clear here. If not for Mikko Rantanen, Megan, the Dallas Stars are not here. They are not in the conference finals, even close, if not for Mikko Rantanen. So, yes,
the Avs would have escaped round 1 if not for Mikko Rantanen.
Pretty easily, right. Yeah, so no doubt people can give Mikko a hard time. He's gone several games now without a goal, but he is still producing. And the only players that have more points than him in these playoffs this season are Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. So Mikko Rantanen holding up his end of the bargain when it comes to generating and doing what he's good at. The problem that the Stars are running into right now is really nobody else is. And you mentioned the power play. Game 3 against the Edmonton Oilers, Megan, was the first time in these playoffs that Dallas has had a game where they have scored a goal and have not gotten a goal on the power play. Their only win in this series so far, they're down 2-1. They were down 3-1 in the game and scored 3 power play goals in the third period to come back and win. So if it's not special teams and it's not Mikko Rantanen, the Stars don't have a lot of answers right now. They got to find a way to get to Stuart Skinner tonight, or they're going to find themselves down 3-1 with not a lot of offense going against a team that can seemingly score whatever they need to score. Also, credit to Edmonton. This is 2 series in a row where their team defense has looked on point.
Yeah, it's an area of the lineup I think they've committed to investing in. And so that left maybe some of a gamble in net, and Stuart Skinner playing well the last 2 games. They're really well-rounded so long as that's the case because of that. And honestly, that's even without Matthias Ekholm to help, which is extremely impressive. Where are we at with Matthias Ekholm, actually? I'm curious.
He not ready for tonight, but he is back. Not tonight, but potentially next game.
I want to give them huge credit.
Oh, absolutely.
For withstanding this far through the playoffs without one of their best defensive defensemen.
And they've used both goaltenders, Megan.
They've had to.
And for them, I'm with you. I'm as we talk through this more, I'm piling more credit on for the Edmonton Oilers. And how about Stu Skinner? Up until game 3, he either got absolutely blown out of the water or shut the other team out. I thought it was great. He was 3-4 with 3 shutouts. I thought that was great.
No, yeah, goalies they're fun. They're funny little guys. They really are funny little guys. And I love to, Edmonton, when you talk about teams relying on a power play, is a team that usually gets accused of this, and they've gotten scoring in all situations, essentially, like 5v5 power play when they need it. Zach Hyman has been putting the puck in the back of the net. So it's not just the Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl show on the power play.
Yeah.
It's more diverse than that. And that's where I want to give them some credit too, where I'm looking at Dallas like, I think you're just a little less dimensional than this current version of Edmonton.
I believe it's 3. It might be 4. I'd need to pull it up and check, but at least 3 goals within the last minute of a period for the Edmonton Oilers in these playoffs. And that's helped them out a lot.
Timeliness matters. So that was the other thing I wanted to raise with Mikko Rantanen and his contribution specifically. You can't knock him for not contributing, but timeliness matters a lot too. And so this is a time for the big game players to be big game players. And that will matter more than the overall points total. It's showing up when you're needed.
Yeah.
Avs know this.
The
better than anyone. It's coming from a hurt place right now.
The Avs know it, and the Dallas Stars are going to need him to show up tonight. So I'm very much looking forward to that game getting going here tonight. Any other thoughts on conference finals?
Let me look at my notes. No.
Let's just say we're up against it a bit here, just a couple more minutes. But I just want to do a quick little around the league. We saw an embellishment call last night on Matthew Tkachuk. There was a hooking call made never had the right way to say that, against him, and then an embellishment call made on him. I saw some arguing last night on Twitter, and genuinely, I think I do agree with it, of like, calling both has always seemed weird. If it was a hook, call the hook. If it was embellishment, call the embellishment. But this is something that Elliot Friedman has reported on Saturday Headlines, Hockey Night in Canada, over the last couple weeks, that embellishment is something the league is looking at in these playoffs in particular, that they felt like they've seen more of it than normal. There was a call last night where Carolina wanted an embellishment call made on Tkachuk, didn't get it, and then later in the game they did. I guess, Megan, just your thoughts. We felt like we saw a good amount of it in round 1, and we even talked to Cale Makar about it as well.
Yeah, I think what's frustrating is it feels like it's a little too late. The way to execute cracking down on embellishment is to be consistent in doing it from the jump, because it has affected the trajectory of these playoffs. That's not to say the result would be different if this was applied more consistently, going back to game 1 for all teams. But the timeliness, no, it matters. And so, I just look at the way officiating feels like it changes in games by game situations. Like game 5 for the Eagles, the refs swallowed their whistles. I don't necessarily mind that. It becomes an issue, though, over the story of a 7-game series if game by game there's a lack of consistency. And so it's like it changes the trajectory. And so I'm all for this being something that the league investigates, because if anything, you go back to the earlier rounds like Avs Dallas, and you can see as a player that there's a strategy to adopt here, that there's value in towing that line of selling something just a little bit more, because you look at Jamie Benn walking into Josh Manson's stick and it resulted in a power play for Dallas. So yeah, you need to crack down on it then, because the players are watching this and seeing a lack of consequence, no accountability. They're going to implement it and take those chances then of, maybe it'll get called once in a blue moon, like with Matthew Tkachuk right now, late in these playoffs. We're in the conference finals, for God's sakes.
Right.
I'm not that angry about this, but I feel like that came off very angry. I just think if you want to do something, you do it right. So you do it at the very beginning and you have the process in place. And that needs to be an off-season goal for the league going into next year. And look, start retooling this, working on it through preseason and having officials kind of brought into the fold with this. Let that be the trial area for it, but not in a conference final. I'm kind of grumpy about that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. The like you said, not saying that anything would have turned out different, but there have been penalties in several series, East and West, where it's like, oof, that's a generous call right there at that moment. So I'm with you. Crack down on it, great, but there's a weird moment to start cracking down.
Be serious about it, because you're cheapening your product, especially by doing it now, because it's gotten this far in these playoffs with it flying under the radar or just being accepted. That's why players are trying to get away with it in the first place. You need to discourage those habits from the jump, nip them in the bud so you don't hurt your product, right? You want this to be the wonderful high skill game. It is the conference finals after all. Don't let the other stuff cheapen it. It's good that they're doing something now, but they need a better plan for next year.
I'm with you. Quickly, Jeff Blashill, hired by the Chicago Blackhawks. Megan, this is a guy who was in the Red Wings organization for a long time in the American League. Finally got the nod just before 2020 to take over behind the bench for the Detroit Red Wings. Just never got where they all hoped to get under Blashill. He gets his second opportunity here with a young Chicago Blackhawks team. Don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but obviously there's some pressure to make sure that you get to a competitive space with Connor Bedard sooner rather than later. This is a young players type coach. Megan, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it's hard with coaches to really feel super excited about one person over the other. But what I like about him is his experience is still a little bit unproven. Like his experience as a head coach during a turbulent time with Detroit, and then as an assistant with Tampa during years that I think would teach very valuable lessons about winning culture, what it takes to win. And so between both those things, he's inheriting a difficult era in Chicago's history. So I think he has some experience with adversity from his time in Detroit and some experience with winning, though, and what it takes through his time as an assistant with Tampa that could be very good for Chicago. But I like Luke Richardson. So, it's a coach can absolutely make a difference, but I think there are other changes needed for the roster construction in Chicago to better support the direction they want to head in.
The Luke Richardson one, I thought that was an interesting decision to get rid of him. I'm with you. I liked him. I thought he was a good guy to have in charge of a group like this. But yeah, it's a business, and I think Blashill's I think it's a nice swing.
No, I like it. Yeah.
Yeah. Megan, there's a lot of teams that still need to bring coaches in. The only other thing I wanted to bring up, Jay Woodcroft's name is been connected to a few different teams. It looks like Jay Woodcroft will be back in the league next year. Your thoughts on him? I don't know. I've always just found Jay Woodcroft to be an interesting character.
Yeah, I think he's interesting because his experience with Edmonton is in a hockey market that's kind of brutal, like relentless in their criticisms of a team, their performance. And so there are things that a coach doesn't have a say in when it comes to how a team gets built, right? That's the front office to decide. And so when we talk about Edmonton and where they've maybe left some things on the table and not bolstering their back end and taking some gambles in net and relying on the star power at the top of the lineup in the forward group, that's not Jay Woodcroft's fault.
Right.
So I'll be curious to see where he lands, because I think there are still some positives that might be better fully realized. Just different front office, different team, different approach to roster management. Yeah, I'll be curious to see. He's another that I'm doors open in my eyes. And with some of the openings that are available, like Boston or Pittsburgh, they seem like markets that can be maybe tough to coach in. And he might have great experience having coached with Edmonton.
One of the other teams that he was tied to was Seattle, which I think market-wise maybe would be better relative to what you're talking about, but
it might be smoother sailing.
Yes. I don't know. I just, and we covered him for a series, and it was a quick series at that. But I just remember watching up close in 22 when the Avs swept them. And the first game was just a barn burner. I think it was 7-6 or 8-6 with an empty netter. The Avs won. And then game 2, they were shut out, and Edmonton really didn't have answers for what the Avs were doing. That was the Pavel Francouz shutout game. And I'll just never forget. I think there was 2 days in between the games. So like we got to Edmonton, then we had a day where we did pressers, and then we had morning skate starting the next day. And I remember at both the off day presser and the morning skate presser, Jay Woodcroft said something to the effect of like, well, we're going to be back in front of our home crowd, and that's really going to help us. And he like harped on that a few times. And I just remember thinking like, my guy, if all you have for adjustments is we're back at home, you are in trouble. And I just remember watching that series saying, I don't know if this guy can coach against other high-level teams. And again, that's maybe a really broad strokes thing to say based off, our limited visibility of him up close. But I just started putting together, like, in my head, yeah, Edmonton seems to get their heads kicked in by every team that ultimately goes on to win the cup. And I wonder if this is a Jay Woodcroft issue where the team is good enough to get them the seeding they need and get them in position, but then he can't, he doesn't deploy a system that can get them past these teams who are really heavily structured. So that'll be something that I'll find interesting to keep an eye on as we get into a new Jay Woodcroft era, if that's where we end up.
I wonder too, sometimes when you're a new coach to a team with really established star talent, the challenges of navigating the way that they like to play, and where you have a say in this.
Interesting. Yeah.
I think back to Calgary, Nazem Kadri, and is it Bruce that I'm thinking of? Gaudreau?
Yes.
And I think, there were just tensions between an old school, right?
Daryl Sutter.
I'm so sorry.
Nope. You're good. Daryl Sutter.
Butting heads with just, there's a way that they already were liking to play. You're kind of new here, and you're trying to implement, though, your style and get through to established players who are some of the best in the league. And so I just wonder if some of that happens with a new coach on a team like Edmonton.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I thought Jay Woodcroft was a good quote, so it'll be good to have him back around the league, but will be interesting to see where he lands. That's going to do it for today. I did see it on Twitter, and then Alyssa dropped a reminder for us. Today is the 3-year anniversary of the Darren Helm 5 seconds left in Game 6 goal of the 2022 run. An all-time Avalanche moment, no doubt about it. We did have one super chat before we get out of here. $2 from Leon. Super chat lights. This was back when we were talking about Eagles, Avs, the parallels there. It says, hopefully both teams start out swinging next season. Yeah, a lot to build on for both teams. I think the Avs are going to be playing with some emotion. I think this was a year that built some scar tissue for them. And the Eagles, you hope the same for them. They can take a lot of what they did this year and move forward to next year. Aaron Schneekloth can build on another year of being the head coach. And it'd be great to see them push for a Calder Cup championship, because we haven't seen that here.
They've got a lot to think about. I mean, I even think to decisions like a Keaton Middleton, who they could have made him eligible for the AHL playoffs, and they didn't. Not a huge deal, but would a player like that have helped the Eagles? Because you look at Abbotsford, and they had a lot of the Vancouver guys, the young Vancouver guys come and help them in this series. And I just wonder if that's something the organization as a whole will be thinking of as, all right, we have two teams that can be competitive in the playoffs now. I don't know if they really entertained that as seriously before, that the way that they plan for how to build the Eagles up next year can plan around some of the postseason and higher expectations now that they've proven that they're worthy of that conversation.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's going to be an interesting offseason to watch unfold. We'll be keeping our eye on all of it. Pucks and Prosecco at 11 tomorrow, right? A little bit earlier. So we'll be back with PMP tomorrow. And then we're just going to keep going. Short week here. She's Megan. I'm Jesse. We got Chloe behind the glass. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, guys, today. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today, guys. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye, everybody.